Welcome back to Berlin, Germany, in week 7 of the LEC Spring Split. The race for playoffs is on fire, with 6 teams fighting tooth and nail for those final spots. One of those teams is SK Gaming, who are facing off against the superstars of G2 Esports in our first matchup of the day. Welcome to the LEC Spring Split. I'm Trevor Quickshot Henry, and I don't know which lineup is more stacked. Is it G2's or this Ready Checks? Because we have amazing Ender and Froskurinn, the best set of analysts I could get. Hi, Vedius. If you thought the race for playoffs was heating up, it exploded yesterday. Look, we've only now got 1 win separating the 6 teams between G2 Vitality and the rest of the table. I mean, this standings table is insanity right now.
And it's the fact that we have basically 6 teams competing for 4 spots. And the teams that I really want to hone in on is kind of the fall of Splyce, Schalke, and SK. It felt like everyone was talking about, you know, are Misfits, Fnatic, or SK going to grab those spots? And it might actually be up for grabs because Schalke and Splyce have suddenly plateaued and are now sitting in a rut.
Yeah, and I mean, and while those teams are falling down, it's giving room for Fnatic to slip right back into playoffs, right? This team is on a winning streak. They're continuing to find very pivotal wins. And I mean, 2 weeks ago, we said, look, the odds are slim, but with every game they continue to win, the odds of them making it get even higher.
I mean, take a look at Bwipo yesterday. His Jarvan was fantastic. The fact that Misfits dropped that game, it just means the gap between Fnatic and this middle of the table is shrinking every single day. And those teams that Frosky just talked about, they might drop out of playoffs.
It's also the fact that Fnatic aren't just winning through the Reckless show. The fact that Bwipo was able to take over the game are now showing why Fnatic are starting to climb up the standings. It's not just that Reckless is the hard carry, not just that they returned to form, but that they're starting to evolve and pick who they carry through.
Yeah, and on the top half of the standings, we see Vitality even gaining more and more ground because Schalke is struggling, Splyce is struggling. They actually don't have competition at the top anymore. And even if they're an enigma to me to a certain extent, even like, because I still don't quite believe in them, especially when it comes to playoffs, they actually understand the win conditions so much that it doesn't matter if they have a sub or not.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, right? It doesn't matter if they have a sub. This team is still a second-place team, even without Jizuke. That was my biggest question for the team is, you know, do they continue to win when they bring in someone different for someone so pivotal on the roster? And they still looked fantastic.
And for me, it's that dirty word of consistency, especially when we're talking about Vitality. But it feels like the top 3 is going to be defined by consistency. And frankly, Origin don't have that consistency yet. They hold the place right now in terms of the standings. But if I'm looking at 3 consistent teams, it's actually G2, Vitality, and again, Fnatic.
Well, look, this is the standings, of course, and we're going to take a look in a second at the breakdown. But, I mean, power ranking-wise, is this reflective at all who the best teams in Europe are amazing?
It really is. And I think the top 2 is kind of steady, and maybe you can make an argument for Origin. But I think the Fnatic, actually, even though they're at 6 and 7 right now in 6th place, they're actually way higher in this power ranking right now.
Reese knows.
I mean, yeah, of course I do. And Fnatic per se, like the way that they play, and as we already said, as Froskurinn already said, the consistency they've shown, like especially recently, and the versatility in their play is really, really dangerous for anyone above them right now.
Well, it just brings us back to that hashtag we started once again yesterday. Every game counts. Do not forget it here in the LEC. For a closer look, though, on the state in LEC, we're heading to Medic for his playoffs checkup.
Thank you very much, Quickshot. Now, coming into the end of the split, we are looking at one of the closest ever playoff races. After a couple of upsets yesterday, and with each team only having about 5 games left of the regular season, I thought I'd take a quick look at the road to Rotterdam for some of our major teams. Now, as you can see, G2 are well at the top of the table. 5 games clear of the place. They've already qualified for playoffs, but I wondered how close are they to locking a top 2 spot? Well, just 1 more win will lock the former champions into that top 2 and guarantee themselves a game in Rotterdam. That's because they sit 5 points ahead of Origin, Schalke, and Splyce, and with only 5 games left to play, they only need that single win. Next up, let's have a look at the stalling Schalke. After a dominant 7-2 start, they have yet to get a win in the second half of the split, culminating yesterday in a loss to Fnatic. Although they currently lie in 3rd place, this team is nowhere near as comfortable as they appear. Schalke still have yet to play Splyce, Misfits, or Origin a second time, and they're all teams that are close to them in the standings, meaning that every game counts so much more for Schalke. A morsel of good news for the fans of the Royal Blue is that they still have Excel and Rogue left to play. But as we saw yesterday, those games are nothing but guaranteed. Finally, wouldn't be playoffs without Fnatic. And after their 3rd win in a row yesterday, their redemption arc is still very much on the cards. I did not doctor any of these numbers. I put on my best cape, got out my time stone, and looked at the strange ways that Fnatic might make it into playoffs. In 10,000 simulations, if you take 50-50 odds for either team to win the game, Fnatic are locked into playoff in 42% of scenarios. That's up from just 26% yesterday. If they keep playing the way they have, though, I think they have a relatively favorable schedule, meaning their true odds may be a little bit higher than that 42%, sorry. It may not seem like much, but it could be that the old adage is true. In Europe, everyone beats everyone, and it's Fnatic that wins.
Everybody beats everybody, and in the end, Fnatic wins. I mean, it's before playoffs. They've got to qualify first. Amazing. How difficult is it to be a player on stage knowing how tight this middle of the pack is, knowing that every single loss could be the loss that eliminates you from playoffs?
It's extremely stressful. I've been in those situations, and for me as a player, I always felt like if I didn't obviously already establish routines throughout the split that I can fall back on, I felt uncomfortable as a player. I didn't know what to do anymore, and you basically get into a habit where you're almost like struggling, you're grasping for things, and then the real panic sets in if you don't know what to fall back on.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where you have to be able to execute in those high-pressure situations. And for some of these teams, these newer teams, newer players, I'm not sure if that's actually going to be something you can hold up with.
G2 Esports one win away from a guaranteed showing in Rotterdam. Before we talk a little bit more about the matchups today, Froskurinn, we had a couple of highlights in LEC, so break them down for us.
Yeah, so yesterday we saw some big surprises on the Rift, and I want to look at 3 of them, starting with Vitality and their sub-mid laner Seiken taking down Misfits. Now, most jumped ship upon the announcement of the Vitality sub, but Vitality turned off the nameplates and slotted Seiken into Jizuke's shoes with a smooth Rise performance. In tandem with Mowgli and Cabochard and some flashy side lane plays, the Vitality B mid laner debuted with ease, and what should have been the easiest form to tackle Vitality suddenly reminds everyone that this team is second for a reason, and it's not just about Jizuke. Now, next up, Excel aren't dead and went from Banana Peel to Blue Shell with a clean performance across the board. And I want to highlight Special in particular. From what seemed like a side grade from Exile, Special slammed critics with his Zoe, helping Excel blow up SK and the standings to show everyone that they cannot be overlooked or counted out. And finally, it's Sylas. Now, he won 3 out of his 4 games, going from XD to OP. Sylas is showing off his high priority due to his versatility in Keystone, Build, and Roll. Both Cabochard and Nukejuk hijacked their games yesterday, and with the EU finally in step with the 9.4 buffs, we expect to see Sylas unchained and on the Rift.
Yeah, and I mean, I think a lot of the reason why we're seeing so much better performances from the Sylas is that he's actually being flexed into the mid lane. I think that we saw him in a lot stronger matchups yesterday, which let him sort of be unleashed and perform in these really important games.
Yeah, it may have to do something with comfort too. Like, we see a lot of teams now first picking it actually and putting enough pressure on the enemy team to actually react to it, because at that point, when you first pick it, what are you going to do? You cannot pick champions that have strong level 6 spikes. You cannot pick the Alistar. You cannot pick the Nocturne. You're basically gifting Sylas tools to operate on the map and basically play against you.
And that's the big question, as we swap from 9.3 to 9.4, and Urgot has those massive nerfs, is Sylas going to be kind of that go-to, since Jace is always banned, of the blind pickable top laner? And it feels like because of his flex, it's either Kennen or Sylas that are showing up every game.
And of course, there's some of the numbers just to help really illustrate this. Take a look at the win rate. 0% on 9.3, hence the XD. 75% yesterday, hence the OP. Listen, I want to touch on that Urgot for a second as well. 9.4 landed yesterday. We saw some Conqueror coming in, Ender. Maybe with the exception of the Misfits draft with the Urgot and really red side. Last pick, Thresh. I mean, what do we make of some of the adaptations outside of Sylas?
Wait. Before he jumps in, I do want to defend a little bit. Yes, it's very questionable to blind pick an Urgot like there, but if you knew that the Sylas was going to go top lane, because you can itemize into the Executioner's Calling, I don't think it's automatically a throwaway. Didn't work out for Soaz, but just a little bit of a defense
Glass
there.
half empty. I'm not sure I buy into it just yet.
Yeah.
Now you can take it into
I'm not sold on the Urgot after this patch. The mana cost really hit his laning phase pretty heavily. As for the top lane question in general, I think that we are going to see a lot of the Sylases, the Kennens you mentioned. I also think Jarvan is another one of those flex picks that's going to be very, very important. And as for the Conqueror champions, I really see them more as counter pick options and not blind pickable choices.
Amazing. One of the other other champions we talked a lot about in preparation for this weekend was the Rek'Sai.
Yeah.
I know that we had some performance, I think 2 games yesterday. What's your take on the Rek'Sai, the Slice, and maybe some of the other 9.4 patches from your perspective?
I mean, I like the Rek'Sai change. Basically, like, it gives her actually playability, because beforehand, Rek'Sai was completely useless. Now you actually can at least red side first trade it, because then you force the enemy team to kind of react to you, especially when you have like another flex pick coming in that you can play around on top of mid. But on the other changes, like, I really like that Urgot is finally out. I'm actually really happy. But he's also only being replaced by Jace. So basically, Jace moves into the Urgot position of being this universal top laner that he can pick into any situation. Yeah, I mean,
trading the better the devil you know for the devil you don't, I suppose.
Quick fire question: Conqueror or Hail of Blades on Rek'Sai? Don't say a word, Ender.
I think if you take Hail of Blades, you're trolling.
Yes.
Ender may be trolling.
Whoa, no. I'm on the Conquer hype train now.
Really?
Yeah,
Sure?
because the Q change, right? It means that you can actually stack your Fury so quickly, and the extra attacks of Hail of Blades aren't as important as they were on 9.3.
It's not what you said 2 days ago.
If we get a Rek'Sai, now for context for the fans at home, these two, as well as Medic, had a very heated debate about which keystone was more important. Let's see which one we get today. We can debate it a little later. Let's also take a look at only 5 games left for each team in the regular season. I wanted to ask the analysts to look at some MVP candidates. Our analysts, I've made them pick 1 player each, and I want you to present your argument for who should be the MVP right now. Amazing, you're our guest. Who's your MVP and why?
My MVP is Jankos, because he is the jungler that fits the best into G2 and basically operates the best for them. So what he basically does for the team is that if you have great lanes, you basically need to facilitate like your jungle presence. You need to basically coordinate everything that's happening. And Jankos is one of the only one, if the only one in the West that can actually do this on this high of a level, where I feel like no other jungler could replace him in this kind of role, where he's both aggressive in the right place at the right time and knows when to play defensive and basically back up his lane. So there's a lot of things that other junglers couldn't do, and he does, and that's why Jankos is my MVP.
Yeah, and that's the thing. When you have G2 who are hyper-aggressive in all of those lanes, Jankos has to juggle perfectly where he's giving his resources and who he's backing up. Because when everyone is playing super forward in their lanes, they open themselves up to ganks, and Jankos is always right there with the counter gank.
Froskurinn, you're not meant to be agreeing with him. You have a different candidate.
Oh, wait.
Who's your MVP? Okay, give me your pitch.
Right. What's the guy who makes Jankos shine? Right. It's Caps. Caps is the easy one. I feel like I did draw a little bit of the short in the stick because it's just so easy to talk about the best player in Europe. Oh, nice.
Hey, those two. Carry on with Caps.
I was just saying the best player in Europe. Caps, even when G2 do fall behind, this guy just has incredible miracle 1v9 performances. I honestly feel that if Europe is ever going to lift a Summoner's Cup, it is going to be because this guy is helping lift it.
I mean, I agree with that. I like it. So we got Jankos, we got get Caps, 2 G2 players. You are forbidden from going G2. And,
I'm not going to go G2.
Where are you going to go?
Because everyone on G2 is on easy mode right now. You have 4 other players on your team that are so fantastic that you don't have any one player that's more valuable than the rest. They're all great, right? I don't want to take anything away from them. A player that is absolutely valuable to his team, though, is Cabochard. Vitality right now are in 2nd place, and it is largely due to his incredible performances in the top lane. And he really does it all, you know? He's plays for the 1v1. He always gets counter picks, so he knows that he's going to have these strong matchups. And then on top of that, he's also often leading the charge in these initiations when we go for team fights. I really don't think that you could put any other top lane into this team, and they would be even near where they are in the standings currently.
Okay, so I have one last question for Amazing. Why is Selfmade not even in the discussion right now? Because isn't he the reason SK is even in playoff contention?
I mean, honestly, I think you need a couple more wins to actually get to that MVP discussion, because even though he's the most valuable player for his team, you still need to, at least, in my opinion, be like top 4, top 3 to actually get into the MVP discussion.
Okay, you guys at home, who is your MVP? Join the conversation, hashtag LEC. Ender's nomination of Cabochard will be playing later tonight as he and the rest of Vitality face off against Origin in our match of the week.
Wait, are we starting already? Sorry, I was just watching Vitality slam OG back in week 3. Yeah, I mean, Cabochard was just a monster.
Cabochard just picking kills out of the woodwork. Blast cones away, but eventually will get taken out by Cabochard. Look at the damage coming out. The Fear Beyond Death. That's 1 Fear off.
In my opinion, Cabochard is MVP of the split. He's a leader of our team. He's gonna crush every top laner that is standing on his way.
Fari has been really stepping up lately, and I expect it to go his way this time.
It's Origin that have beaten G2, that teams and players behind the scenes are talking about could be the 2nd best team in the league.
When we beat G2, I think all of us had this feeling of we actually did it.
Origin on the cusp of history!
Vitality, they're just not going to let them come in and take their spot from them.
They won against G2, something that they can be proud of. And just best of ones are really random and everyone can win against everyone.
If you beat G2, that doesn't mean now suddenly you're the best team. You need to keep grinding and you need to be on the top.
2019 is supposed to be a redemption year for Mithy, and so far it's looked good. But now he needs to take Origin to the next level, push themselves to Rotterdam, and that's what this match is all about.
When Mithy came back to Europe, I met him in solo queue, and I just laughed my off.
We got in this game and I inted it really hard, and then he all-chatted me, see ya in January XD. So here I am.
Even though I have so much respect for Mithy because he's a legend, but I think it's time for young blood to take over.
It stood in the back of my mind, so I do have that drive to win against him.
He gets the hook off, but there's the quickness. So much damage coming out from Patrick already. Mickey dead.
Doesn't matter what lane we choose to play for, because we can survive bot lane on our own pretty well. But if we have 50-50 matchup, at least there is no chance.
The best way to play against Attila is like, you just treat him like a normal person. You start talking about him, then he will start performing.
Never trash talk me again, you little... That's what you are upset.
He's a good player, no hard feelings against him, and then we will just win.
Oh, I love the spiciness of that match of the week video. Both of these teams won yesterday. Vitality is fighting for second place. Origin is fighting for seeding in the standings. There is a lot at stake in our final game of the day.
Oh, there absolutely is, Trevor. And for me, I'm focusing on the top lane. We got Cabochard versus Alphari. And you guys already know my opinions on Cabochard. I think he's going to come into this matchup and lay down the hammer on Alphari.
Do you know what hammer is going to be laid down? It's Nukeduck versus Seiken. That guy eats rookie mid laners alive. This is what, his second game in the LEC? Like, Nukeduck's gonna obliterate him.
I don't know. I saw that man's rise. He looked pretty clean.
Well, listen, you can actually watch Nukeduck's view in our POV stream over at twitch.tv/RiotGames2 for our match of the week. It is the final game of the day. Before we get there, we have 4 more games to work our way through. Let's take a look at how those games play out. And amazing, outside of our match of the week, where are you drawing your attention to?
What do you think?
Schalke versus Splice?
Exactly.
But tell me why.
Of course, because Schalke...
I don't know what that was.
Okay,
showing your age, Trevor.
No, Schalke is obviously... I mean, if you guys didn't know, I'm working for Schalke, so in the end, I obviously am focusing on them because they have been in a recent slump, and I want them to overcome this. And today is the perfect chance because I think they actually match up really, really well against Splice, which are both kind of AD carry-centric teams where both of them rely on both Upset and Kobe to carry the game for them. And I think in that case scenario, Schalke has the upper hand.
And for me, I'm actually looking at Misfits versus Excel. The game that I was excited about wasn't this one initially, but after Excel's upset yesterday over SK, I'm like, who's actually the favorite there?
Okay, so you're setting me up now for a prediction, which is beautiful. Before I get the reveal, after Vitality's win yesterday, which the fans correctly predicted, they've increased their lead in the race for Superior Analyst. They now have a 2-point advantage over Dracos. Get well soon, buddy. I entered my predictions yesterday, so I'm not going to be on the list in a moment. You guys at home, keep sending in your votes to @LOL Esports. Huge shout out to Romar, who actually managed to get lucky for the first time all split with those outlandish predictions. I'm not going to acknowledge them. And actually, Frosk, you did put your money where your mouth is. You were calling XL over Misfit.
And now here's the thing. I got to catch up to Twitter, which means I got to make calculated risks here.
Oh, nice cop-out.
I knew that they would go for Misfits, and I'm like, you know what? At this point, I'm a coin flip. Misfits, their drafts are all over the board. I know I defended SOAS. Still, it was a blind pick. I got a 9.4. I'm going to stand by
Okay, but now hold on. So that's fair. I can justify that. You're the only one that's gone Splice over Schalke.
Yeah, what's his
yourself.
excuse?
I don't know. Like, both. So honestly, this was a really hard game to predict because both of these teams have been struggling in the last few weeks. But I think the big difference for me is the jungle. And I think Xerxes is going to come in and give Splice enough of a lead to eventually close out for a win.
Amazing. Your turn to chime in. You're allowed to rebut if you want to. But you picked Origin over Vitality for this one. Why is that?
I feel like Origin is really good when they can actually prepare for an opponent, so the day 2 actually helps them a lot when they see Vitality play. And I think, as Froskurinn already talked about, Nuke is going to be a lot better than Seiken, and that matchup is going to be hell for the rookie.
Well, the LEC secret agent me has returned to Europe, and I'm going to continue to be asking the tough questions both on and off the Rift. Earlier this week, I caught up with a familiar face, and it went okay. Let's check out how it went.
Hello and welcome to another installment of Between Two Iverns. My name is Ender, and today my guest is a legend in the esports community. He, of course, was a superstar Spanish mid laner back in the old days of League of Legends and went on to found one of the most successful league organizations in Europe. It is, of course, FLICKR.
You really called me Spega, didn't you? I'm Ocelote. I'm Carlos Ocelote. I'm also Spanish, maybe that's why. I used to play Milan as well.
Who?
It's Ocelote. You probably should have known that.
I mean, I had a clip that we were going to be showing FLICKR.
Yeah.
It was sort of an iconic moment for him back in 2013.
Okay.
But
you know what? I kind of know what you're gonna show me right now.
I mean, yeah, it's right up here, the FLICKR backdoor, of course.
Yeah, I've watched a couple times.
Can you just imagine what the other team was thinking, though? Right? Like,
yeah.
it's Caston's on your Nexus, and
that's kind of me. You know, that's. Yeah.
Wait a second.
That's
wait.
I'm
No. Can you do this for me? Just. Okay. Oh my God, that is you. I know you. You're the Gamers 2 guy, right?
So, first of all, do not ever say Gamers 2 again. Do me that favor.
Gamers 2, right? I mean,
I really, really don't like you.
I'm just trying to do my job, man.
Try harder.
Okay, well then maybe answer my question. What do you miss about the old days of League of Legends?
Oh, don't worry, I got this. Don't worry, I'll answer seriously.
Can you stay on that side, please?
You know, League of Legends was, best game for me. Although League of Legends today is much better than it was yesterday. But I do kind of miss, winning as a player and being in front of the crowd and raising trophies and,
I mean, it's been a long time for you, right?
Nah, as an owner, actually, it's been a few weeks only.
Since you lifted a trophy, I don't think so.
It's a comfortable interview.
Yeah?
I'm liking it.
So, you and Steve from Team Liquid, combined, how many titles do you think you two have bought?
Bought?
Yes, bought.
Oh, bought.
Bought.
Not one.
I mean, let's be honest.
Okay. Let's keep going. Next question.
Okay. So how many scarves are in your closet back at home, would you say?
Before I met my wife, probably around 60-ish. Then I met my wife, and she threw away all of my scarves. And
that's horrible.
And made me buy really expensive ones. So I have like 10 maybe.
There's one
I see what you're
scarf
doing.
that money can't buy.
Well, are you sure about that?
I guess we'll find out this split. This, of course, is the Fnatic Madrid Championship scarf.
Yeah, okay.
G2 wasn't even in Madrid.
You know one thing Fnatic doesn't have?
What's that?
Caps. I think Fnatic choked in Worlds Finals. I think Fnatic overreached and didn't have the hanger to win Worlds. You know what? You have more questions, you say, right?
Yeah.
You can send them. You can send them to Keanu. He's my assistant. Fantastic guy. You'll love him. Is it your first day? It wasn't too bad, man, for your first day.
I still don't really know who this guy is.
I have to admit, I am blown away that you can actually pull that off with such a straight face. It's impressive. Do you know the difference between FLICKR and Ocelote now, at least?
Well, one was better than the other.
Who won the backdoor?
Oh, God. Oh, God.
Maurice, how would you do in that interview?
On which side?
What, if you're being interviewed by Ender?
I think I would have walked out a bit earlier.
Let your emotion get the better of you, maybe?
Yeah, probably.
A little bit. Well, listen, we will see Ocelote's G2 in just a few minutes as they will be going up against SK Gaming in our first game of the day. We'll turn our attention to the pre-match because, of course, G2 Esports, they are still the best team in Europe. They are one win away from locking in a spot in Rotterdam, and this is a gigantic challenge for SK Gaming, Froskurinn.
Especially in SK's current form right now because they were just upset by Excel. Now, that said, it is a bit of a trend that SK tend to lose their first game and they win their second game. But when you're looking at the Goliath that is G2 Esports right now in current form, I don't know if that's going to hold out for SK today.
Okay, let's turn our attention to SK just for a little bit. They're fighting in the race for playoffs after that loss to XL. I have a very difficult question, but there are some reasons, and I want to hear them. However outlandish they may be, how does SK pick up a win today?
It's going to be tough, honestly. But I think what it has to come down to is the man we always talk about, and it's self-made. And I think that when G2 have been exploited in the past, it's through smart early game pathing. Specifically, I remember Cold in the Origin game. And what self-made has to sort of do is contain Jankos, stop him from making plays, and then actually just force on the opposite side of the map. I think that worked very well for Origin, and it's something that SK should be trying to replicate.
I think they have to target caps, honestly. I think Pyrin is actually mechanically a really good player. So if you actually target caps and take him out of the game, you kind of take away a lot of the roams that G2 is trying to orchestrate in the early game, where, for example, they dove top yesterday really early on. And I think that's something that a lot of teams haven't quite looked into, because they think of caps as such a superstar that is untouchable. But in laning phase, he's sometimes over-aggressing, so you can attack that if you want to.
I mean, frankly, in the blueprint, when Origin did take down G2, and that's the only tape that we have of G2 actually bleeding, that was what they did. They managed to get nuked on the Zed pick. So if you're able to counter-pick caps and kind of delay his impact on the map, as well as hopefully solo kill him, if you can, and then stall if you can, and then stall out the game. Because I think another problem that teams fall into is they try to step toe-to-toe against G2 in the lane phase, and they just get blasted before 50 minutes. Just take a step back, see if you can neutralize the map, and take your chances in the actual team fighting phase.
And for me, it's the sort of window between 15 and 20 minutes where G2, even when they're down in gold, because sometimes they are, let's be real, they just fight you so rapidly, and teams just can't keep up with that type of pace. They just keep forcing, and they have these comps usually on G2's side that are very good at beating you in that tight window. I think that these teams need to recognize that, play a smart vision game, avoid going blow for blow in all these, frequent skirmishes, and that's how you sort of draw out the game and then beat G2.
Yeah, just don't get better into fights. Like from the 15-20 minute mark, I saw, for example, Schalke, when they actually were up 2K, they suddenly got forced into a fight that they actually didn't want to take. You play your own pace, even if G2 is over-forcing or forcing into you, and you can actually operate the map properly. If you play their style, you will lose.
And I will say that trying to stay away from fighting G2 is very difficult, but it's specifically who they fight around, and it does go back to caps. G2 will always fight on priority because they know that they can make the faster rotation and outplay you. But if caps doesn't have that priority, I'm actually curious if G2 will be as bold to pull the trigger as many times as they like to when they do fall behind.
Okay, now let's see if SK can even do it. We're about 2 minutes away from draft, so I'm going to turn to Amazing and say, in this game, SK Gaming are on the red side. You've already alluded to some of the matchups. Frosk mentioned maybe a counter pick to go into Jankos. You mentioned maybe a favorable pick for Pyrian. What specific champions would you like to see that could help SK in this regard? Or do you think it really just comes down to counter-picking a lane as a priority and then playing around that?
I think it would actually make sense for Selfmade to kind of pick out of Jankos' champion pool and kind of take away certain things. For example, the Elise would actually be good against G2 style, because if they try to force onto you and Elise is basically used as a counter pick, you will more likely than not lose, because you cannot face check brushes in the river. You cannot really fight 2v2. You cannot fight 3v3 because Elise is such a strong champion in the mid game. So I would like to see that, and potentially, and as I already said, Pyrian to get a counter pick. I don't know how his champion pool is. I don't know if he's playing Zed. I don't know if he's a Yasuo player. Like, we have not seen too much from him yet. He's more been on scaling picks. So I'm actually just eager to see what he's going to bring out.
For me, I actually really want to see a Nocturne. Now, that seems counterintuitive in that Nocturne's not one of those junglers that can gank before the level 6. He's pretty reliant on it. But I think against G2, who like to play so far forward in their lanes, the counter gank potential or setup potential for a Nocturne can actually be quite punishing when G2 want to have that forward percentage in the lanes and catch them off guard.
And here's a play-by-play question, so forgive me if I'm way out there. But champions like Shen or Galio have traditionally been pretty good into teams like G2, who like to pick fights, like to dive. Could SK use some sort of global counter or counter-reaction type of strategy to also shut them down?
Yeah, I mean, I think the champion to bring up is Galio. I think Galio support is pretty strong right now, and it's very good at neutralizing sort of numbers advantage fights, and that's what G2 tend to go for a lot. They'll bring their support jungler and group up for these fights, above mid lane, and that's where a Galio can sort of react to those types of plays. So I don't think it's actually that far out here for SK to go for that type of a pick.
Well, listen, SK are going to have to put their money where their mouth is, because there is so much on the line today in the LEC. Without further ado, G2 versus SK.